Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Thanks for taking the time.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
Maybe,
Sarah.
maybe you could kick off with a brief intro, setting the scene, where audiences can find the whole ensemble cast, and particularly your characters going into this second season. I guess now they're going to the next stage and being confronted with these visions. So tell us a bit about it.
Well, I play Dusty, and I am a local history teacher in a small town called Deerfield. And this magic machine has come to our local town in the previous season that has given us the promise that it's going to tell us what our true life potential is going to be, should we give it enough data about ourselves and throw it a few quarters. And we are now at the stage where everybody in the town has used this machine and has been trying to fulfill their potential, or at least deal with whatever is written on the card to some regard. And that's where you meet us. And season 2, we'll see those consequences play out, as well as the machine giving us some new oracle-based information, it seems.
About Giorgio, I mean, in this season, finding new love, new tracksuits. Tell us a bit about the arc that he goes on in this season.
He meets the love of his life, and finally he can be his true self. So maybe he finds his true potential this time around. Maybe in the first season, he was trying to live up to that superstar card, and now he can actually feel like a superstar. And
for Dusty, I mean, I guess when they found out their different potentials, Dusty and Cass, it felt like Dusty was, I'm where I'm supposed to be, and Cass was on a completely different track. But now they're kind of crossing over maybe in another way, and just sort of making this quite big decision to, live slightly separate lives but under the same roof. So what was it like going on that journey with the character, particularly Dusty and Cass's relationship?
Well, I think a lot of couples who are 20 years into a marriage, if somebody suddenly said, hey, this card says that maybe you shouldn't be, and it feels like it's magic, a lot of people, if they're so inclined, will believe the bloody card. So that's where we're finding this couple, who are growing maybe sideways from each other a little bit. They got together as teenagers, so maybe have never experienced much time alone. And we get the impression that both of them really long for that. Whether it means that it will make the relationship untenable, we don't know. But it's certainly thrown a kind of a curveball into the whole thing. So he ends up kind of slowly drifting away from the marriage. She kind of gets on with different parts of her life, and we kind of see whether that's going to be good for them or not.
What's so appealing about the show, and what's really connected with audiences, is that it's kind of dealing with very everyday things, very ordinary things, but with this sort of sci-fi twist. So we're sort of dealing with existential questions, but it always remains lighthearted. What was really the appeal for you when you jumped on board, and what do you think it is that's really captured people's imaginations?
I think you actually said it best, Sarah. That's one of the things that I love. Our jobs are simple. Our jobs are to take what's off the page and make it as believable as possible. But it's always fun when you're part of something that is talking about bigger issues. And just like you said, we're talking about deep life questions on our show, but all we're really doing is hanging out in my basement, in my game room, and I'm helping Dusty through his relationship tribulations and enjoying the new love that I have in my life, And
for you, Chris, what is it that you really loved about the premise and I guess the sort of tone and levity of the show?
I like the tone and the levity. Always up for that, and feel like that's probably my the reason for me being around. And in terms of what it was, particularly this show and this premise, I read it coming out of the back of COVID, and it felt like a big reset type show where people were very much feeling the great reset going around. And this kind of promised that, in the idea that you could reset your life based on what's written on this card. And that felt like an attractive proposition to bring to an audience.
And did you find yourself, I mean, I guess the audience is perhaps like having all these questions pop in their own heads, like, what if I'd taken that different life choice, or is my destiny to be something else? Or sometimes is that information actually not that helpful? I mean, you can't always be blowing up your own life just to completely follow something else, or there are always going to be sacrifices. So did you have people reacting in that way, or is it something you were also thinking about for yourselves? Like, should I have taken some different life choices?
I mean, if anything, it made me feel good about what I've gotten lucky enough to call my career. Because if I had to play the same character for 30 years, I'd probably get a little antsy. But in what we get to do, we get to switch up what we do in each job. So that's, if anything, it reaffirmed that feeling for sure.
I mean, like that, I agree with Josh. Our jobs are so kind of randomly scattered all over the place. The idea of a reset would be just like to be at home for a bit and to not have kind of wild hours. But I feel like it's been a big part of my life, a great reset, because I'm my mother's age when she decided to go back to college. And so she's been, she was a housewife and a nurse and then was a therapist for the last 40 years. And that's been her life. So it's kind of, I've seen that in another person where it's like, oh, you can completely change everything right where I am now. And that's can be an attractive proposition for a lot of people. And
tell us about working with David West Reed. I mean, I know obviously having, been really enthralled by Schitt's Creek and, having that similar ability just to make these characters, be flawed, but also incredibly relatable. And you feel so invested all the time. He's brought something very similar to the show. And it feels like the atmosphere on set must have just been brilliant. And you all had a lot of fun working together. So what's it like working with him and being on set together?
He's such a warm guy,
He's incredible.
He's got that kind of Schitt's Creek warmth to him, and I think he permeates that through the show. I mean, it was a slightly tricky show to shoot just because it was so fucking COVID-y. We were still very much in like mask time. So we probably missed out on a little bit of those early adventures of fun with each other. But because we all get on so well, we've been getting through it and having a great time. And I think a lot of that comes from David and his warmth towards everybody.
Did you have a favourite moment, whether on this season or the last, or when you're watching it back? Is there a favourite scene?
I got to live out a childhood dream of mine towards the back end of this season. And that was a gift from David. He was very excited to tell me what we were going to do in this episode. And it took a little bit of rehearsing. It took a little bit of physical work. And it brings me and Damon together, who plays Father Ruben. It brings us together in a very fantastic way. So shooting that episode was a lot of fun. I told you as much as I could tell you without spoiling the episode, but just know that when it arrives, I am a 10-year-old boy running around doing everything that I did as a kid. All the things I was practicing in the mirror, they all came out in this episode.
I like the scenes where we're all together, and there's a bunch of us kind of staring at a big blue machine.
Yeah.
I get to do a lot of sitting in those scenes and just kind of looking at a screen and going, what? Oh my God, you should see this. All that kind of acting I really enjoy. Oh my God, that's it. All that kind of shit. I'm like, what? You can do it. So I like those. And it means that we get to hang out a bit and have a bit crack.
With what we do, all of our storylines are so individual. So just like Chris was saying, those days that I see all of us on the call sheet together, it's going to be a fun day. It's going to be a great day.
100%. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. And I can't wait for everyone to jump into season 2 with a big door prize. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.